Felix here, and another Chinese property developer is about to go into default. This time it is Sinic, a smaller developer, but still nevertheless part of this whole story. So we're going to look at what this really means. How does it impact stocks? For example, as I'm filming this here, Alibaba in Hong Kong is down almost 4%. So here's the headline from the South China Morning Post. I'm based in Hong Kong, if you hadn't realized this. Chinese developer Sinic warns of default on a 250 million bond due next week. We have similar stories out on Reuters, likely to default on their bonds. And here is the stock chart. And this is not a chart I made up. It is actually what it looks like. We were sort of bobbing along quite nicely. And then, boom, one day, 90% loss of all equity. Trading was halted. It hasn't resumed, much like Evergrande. So no way for shareholders to get any of their money back. It's trading at 50 cents now. It was trading at $4 before. So massive, massive wipeout of capital here. Now, what does this mean in the bigger picture for us as stock investors? Do we get this Lehman type knock-on effect where the dominoes all knock each other over? Or is this just something that is isolated and can be contained? I should always say this is not financial advice. This is just for entertainment only. Always be smart and check your own facts. And let me run you through what's actually going on here. So the fears over the Evergrande collapse have basically led to the bond market to slump. That means that all Chinese property developers, whether overly indebted or not, are finding it incredibly hard to raise capital. And the US dollar foreign bond market to them was the vast majority of where their funding came from. More than 90% of all their bonds are in US dollars. What does that mean? It means refinancing isn't possible. It means if you are a fairly healthy company, but you've got a couple of billion of bonds to repay, you would normally do that by issuing new ones with another 5 or 10 year maturity period, and you would then use that money, at least part of it, to repay the old ones. Now, that door has been shut. And that's the worry when people talk about contagion here and people talk about sort of Lehman Brothers type events. Now, there are a couple here that are sort of on the edge, very much on the cliff. Modern Land is one. They basically asked on Monday to investors in China, well, investors internationally, but they are in China and Beijing, to delay repayment of $250 million bond for 3 months to avoid any potential defaults. So that's basically saying, look, we haven't got the money, we don't quite know how to raise it. Then last week we had Fantasia Holdings Group. They failed to pay $206 million bonds, citing all sorts of things from pandemic to the economy to change in regulations, because banking regulations have been tightened at the same time. So they can't just go to their usual bank and say, will you help me out? The banks will say, we are not permitted by Beijing's updated laws. So what we are seeing, therefore, is an increase in real estate companies' bond defaults to $7.2 billion so far this year. And that's not an insubstantial amount. Back for comparison, last year it was 2.8 billion. So this is almost a triple situation here. And this is about to get much, much worse. Now, I do personally think that this spillover effect here is manageable. I think what the Chinese government is doing proactively is to stop Evergrande contaminating the whole industry, but because they're not bailing Evergrande out, and the government won't because they want to set an example and punish Evergrande here, they are essentially closing the door for these companies to raise money on international bond markets. And therefore, these companies are going to have to find alternative revenue sources or alternative fundraising methods. Now, for Evergrande, we are seeing that certain developers, certain state-owned enterprises are buying up bits of Evergrande, which gives Evergrande some cash needed. Now, why did Evergrande then default? Well, not default, but why did they not pay their bond coupon this week again? Because there will be a negotiation. All investment bankers seem to agree with that. You get the foreign US dollar bondholders, they get together, they appoint a bunch of law firms, and then those go and approach Evergrande and say, look, we hold X billion of your debt. How much will you pay? Because we know you're not paying the coupons, and we don't like that. Now, if Evergrande doesn't pay its coupons for a month, 30 days, they go into default, insolvency gets kicked off, it goes through courts, it takes years, and international bondholders will likely get zero or very close to zero. So therefore, the international bondholders have an incentive to accept a pretty low price. Now, at present, Evergrande bonds are trading at about 20 cents on the dollar. So if they got 25 cents on the dollar, people might actually be making a 25% return here in a month, which annualized is absolutely marvelous, 300% plus return. So there are a lot of bond sharks out there who actually like this trade. What Evergrande, however, is doing is they're saying, look, we're not paying you anything, and we're going to wait till the very last moment to start negotiations, because that makes us stronger as a negotiating partner, because if you don't agree, we just default. And then what are you going to do? You can't talk to us anymore. You're going to have to go through the courts. So this is essentially a parallel to what the US politicians do with debt ceilings. They wait till, Friday night, 5 p.m. before they come to an agreement. So Evergrande's going to do the same strategy here to be able to push down the agreements, the amounts they have to pay bondholders in the end, and get the best deal for themselves, because management at Evergrande still have hopes that they'll survive. I don't think they will, but they have, for example, announced that Evergrande's EV car company, yes, they have one, will start producing cars next year. Now, I wouldn't bet my money on that, personally speaking, but they are clearly making fairly desperate moves here to survive. Therefore, they haven't got anything to lose, essentially. So we're going to get some serious jitters here. We've got about 2 weeks left till the 30-day deadline kicks in. So there will be a lot of volatility in Chinese equities and generally the market, because the market's going to get spooked by this. So bear in mind, volatility is going to be on the up the next 2 weeks. That can be marvelous for options trading, for example. So there's always a silver lining here. Do take advantage of my free guide to boost your investment returns down below. That is a completely risk-free, completely free thing. In just 1 hour, you will improve your returns. That's my promise. Otherwise, you can tell me off about it, but I really think you will. If you want to dig a bit deeper into just research, understanding what really goes on, what really moves the market, and how can you essentially copy and paste successful portfolio templates to boost your returns so that you don't have to worry whether things go up and down each week, and simply enjoy the compounded returns over time, then the Master Stocks course is for you. In that community, you also have the benefit of me on the side. You can always ask me questions every single day. And if you are a little bit more of an aggressive trader, you want to build passive income from your portfolio, well, I do it with options. I'd recommend you do too. Don't buy and sell stocks in the short term. It doesn't make sense. You got to buy stocks for the long haul. Otherwise, you don't make any money with it. But if you want to get income from gains on what's happening in the market here, you could say, for example, well, over the next 2 weeks, Chinese equities might not do so well because of what's happening here with Evergrande and others. Well, options trading is the way to go. So check it out and take advantage of my coupon Build Wealth, valid until Sunday evening, New York time. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.